Our speaker is Sam Bushman, and Sam describes himself as the family man. Along with his strong Christian beliefs, his wife Julie and his 8 children are his treasures. His hobbies include homeschooling his children, playing games, fun in the outdoors, reading, and love of music, and his favorites is talk radio. Sam has been a talk show host for over 12 years. He's sharing his God-given gift of gab on a wide range of topics. His radio programs have been syndicated on several networks. He now hosts several nationally syndicated talk shows, including the Real Estate in Focus, your radio resource for all things real estate, Tech Watch Radio. It's a technology that he covers, how it relates to our lives and how it's best used on Saturdays, from a show that airs on Saturdays from 10 to 11 a.m. Liberty Roundtable, which he graciously has allowed me to be interviewed on or participate in every month. That's a candid political discussion of current issues affecting you and your liberty. That's Monday through Friday, 8 to 11. He keeps a very busy schedule, I'll tell you. And these shows are syndicated through republicbroadcasting.org and Accent Radio Network. Of course, you can pick them up on the internet. Sam enjoys his opportunities as a fill-in talk show host, broadcasting across the country via his home studio and the ISDN link. Sam also runs a consulting business, end-to-end technologies, specializing in radio automation, digital audio production and editing, voiceover work, remote control access, networking, internet streaming, etc. Sam is available as an IT consultant for a small business. He's going to tell us once again this evening about he who has the media makes the rules. Sam Bushman, let's welcome him.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate Jim and all that he does for everybody. His hard work is always noticed. He's a gracious guy and never takes the credit, but he deserves it, so we appreciate him, number one. Number two, you know, when you learn to speak and you kind of take some classes and learn to speak, they always say, listen, if you're kind of paranoid, picture everybody in their underwear. I just kind of can't picture this. So we'll have to start somewhere else, I guess. It's never helped me too much. You know, I had the opportunity to take off right before we got here and go to Andrew Jackson's grave. And it was awesome. And I kind of think to start out this talk today, I'd like us to think about, you know, he ratted out the bankers, called them a bunch of vipers and thieves and all this stuff, right? Andrew Jackson. What I want to do is just use the Constitution Party to rat out all the Republicrats. Can you guys help me get that done? Anyway, Andrew Jackson, when you go there and visit the grave, there's a real tribute to his wife there and for all that she did, and she was kind of quiet. Her name was Rachel. She wasn't really into politics. She was a little bit paranoid when he was running for office. I guess there was, I don't know, something to do with some improprieties or something about their early marriage. I don't even know the details, except to say that he wanted to protect her. And the sad part about it is they all know how to get to every one of us. And his wife passed away, but then he became president, and he ratted him out. And I submit that, you know what, there was a soft point there with his wife that he had for the rest of his life. He visited her grave as often as he could. It said in the later part of his life he visited her grave every day. I bring that up just to say that, you know what, every one of us who have family and friends have a vulnerable spot. And I want to tell you that the mainstream press and those who control the money in America, they know where to strike for that tender spot for each of us. So keep that in mind as we continue with our discussion today. We're going to cover a lot of ground, and we kind of take no prisoners. We're going to do it very directly, very hard-hitting, and we're going to do so even you might like some of the people we attack. And I want you to know that our attacks are nothing personal. All right? Some of the people we attack at first, you know what? If you went to church with them, if you were next door neighbors with them, you know what? I'm sure they'd be great people. What we're attacking is what goes on in the world of politics. What we're attacking is what happens from the mainstream press. Okay? And what it forces people to do or not to do sometimes. All right, so the title of my talk is He Who Owns the Media Makes the Rules, presented by Sam Bushman. I'm a talk show host. I do a radio program called Liberty Roundtable with my buddy Kurt Crosby. And I want to talk about the power of one. And I start out with Andrew Jackson today on purpose because wasn't he one guy? And he single-handedly shut down the banker thugs? Does that give you guys an indication of what power you may have? You may not be president, but the power of one is beyond imagination. Look at Ron Paul and what he's been able to do. The power of one. He was a nobody for 30 years. Now we've got national discussions about auditing and shutting down the Federal Reserve. Bring it on. We might have round two. Come on. All right, so he who owns the media makes the rules. The power of one, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a principle called the issue is honesty today, because that's really the issue here. And that's why we attack a lot of the people that we do. It's about honesty. It's about the power of one, and it's about putting your money where your mouth is. All right, so I want to talk in slide 2. I want to tell you a little bit about our personal story. I made most of my money in real estate. I made my money as an IT consultant. But about 20 years ago, I was trying to work on a political campaign, and I went to get some campaign literature and met my buddy Kurt Crosby that's with me. Anyway, together, we, about 20 years ago, heard some hard-hitting talk radio, exposing the bogus press. And you know what, at first we're like, you know what, is this fraud? By the way, we're on slide 2. Is this fraud, or are these guys onto something? So we got the facts, we dug in, we did some research, and we realized that, you know what, this is serious business. They were onto something, they had the information, and we said, you know what, we've got to get involved. So we started out listening to radio talk shows. One of them was by a guy by the name of Jerry Hughes. He did a show called Washington on Trial. Now see, I like that kind of topic. That's all right with me. So we got involved. We first listened to it so late at night, we called up the radio station and we said, hey, you know what, guys? How do we carry this, programming where we can listen to it at a better time? And they're like, what are you talking about? We're like, this radio programming is awesome. They're like, oh, we just flip on a satellite and go home. We're like, will you put it on a better time so we can listen? They're like, no. We're like, oh, come on, listen. This is important. Who cares? We don't care. Then we said, we'll pay you. They said, deal. That's how it works. Sad to say, that is how it works. He who has the gold makes the rules. Slide 3. So out of the frying pan into the fire is what happened. So we said, you know what? We don't like these guys controlling us so much. What happened is we basically got them by paying them to put on the programming that we wanted, which was great. And at first, what happened was we would run the radio programs, would get advertisers that would sponsor the shows. Once the month was over, we would bill the advertisers, the sponsors, and then pay. And all of a sudden, the radio station owner came to us one day and he said, hey, you guys are going to have to pay in advance now. We're like, why? Just because I want you to. Yeah, I know, but we pay good on time. I don't care. Remember, he makes the rules? So the rules changed. So we decided to change the rules too. So we went out of the frying pan into the fire, and we decided we're going to go buy a radio station. So I sold the house that I had, and we purchased AM 540 KNAK, which is an AM radio station in Delta, Utah. And I moved my family, and we got Kurt Crosby to move his family, and both of us moved our families 100 miles, and we learned how to run radio by the School of Hard Knocks. And it was kind of rough, and we were like, chief bottle washer, that kind of stuff. It was fantastic. But we learned a lot about the media. And we ran that station for 10 years. Finally, we sold it to like-minded Americans. And we sold that radio station in 2005. Since then, we currently syndicate our radio program called Liberty Roundtable. It's a hard-hitting political constitutional talk show. And our goal is to syndicate that show on AM and FM radio stations across the country, to the internet live, as well as on demand. And we also have 2 other interesting things. We have what's called a Roku player that people can listen to the program on. In addition to, we have an unlimited phone line. If you have unlimited long distance on your phone, you can dial this number and you can listen anytime, 24/7, as many listeners as we want. So there's a lot of new ways to listen to the broadcast, which I'll get into in a minute. But we learned a lot of things in the world of the business, the hard knocks of radio, learning the media kind of by baptism of fire. And we recall some valuable lessons that I'd like to kind of brief you on, because I think it's helpful to understand what those of us in the media really encounter. Okay, number 1, it takes lots and lots of money. Does anybody have any idea how much it takes to syndicate a radio talk show? In the olden days, TV, they said, was 10 grand an hour. Radio was $1,000 an hour. You know, it's getting cheap now. It's only like $100, $150 an hour. You can do it a lot less expensively. The problem is, you know, who are you going to talk to? And that's kind of the issue. So when I tell somebody it costs $100, $150, $200 an hour, they're saying, Sam, that's way expensive. I can do it for a lot cheaper. And my response is, yeah, and you can talk to the left-handed prairie dogs, right? I'm with you. Okay, so that's part of the issue is you got to have enough money not only to get the production done and get all the talent happening and get everything going on, but you've got to also then create a way for people to listen to you. And that's the harder part. It's getting easier. Things are changing in the media, but that's still the hard part. So number one, we realize it takes lots and lots of money. Number two, we learned that people simply can't take the controversy. People that were your friends, people that were your family, people that you thought you could count on are like, I don't know this guy. It's strange how that happens. People that used to see at the store and go, oh, how are you? Now they're like, you know, kind of, and they're just simply not interested in what you are, what you have to say. Things change. It's amazing. Okay, number three, we learned that, you know what? The wrong kind of advertisers either want to control what you say or drop you like a rock. And that's a very interesting thing. And we are learning this more and more with the American Family Association and others who put together these boycotts, right? And you know what? The advertisers listen to those boycotts. Well, boycotts exist all along the way. The mainstream press kind of boycotts their talk show hosts and those who listen by making sure that it never gets that far. Well, they're starting to lose the battle as Americans become more and more educated. So even though it seems like we can't make any ground, we're getting a lot of ground. They don't want you to know that, but we truly are. So never forget that. But they either want to control what you say. If they can't do that, they'll dump you. Number four, lots of friends make heavy loads light. You know, you're trying to move your house, right? It takes you forever. You're driving your car back and forth. It's like trip 3002. Okay, but if you have a lot of people that help you pretty soon, you know what? Your house is set up and you're ready to have the home welcoming party, right? And so, you know what? A lot of people make a lot of difference. A lot of people to contribute to radio talk shows, a lot of people to write articles, a lot of people to help fund projects. There's no end to the participation that Americans can have in the media. You might say, well, I'm not a great talker, Sam. Fine, you can write. I'm not a great writer, Sam. Do you have a business? Sam, do you have a way that somebody can speak? There's a lot of things people can do. Even something as simple as showing DVDs of other events, things that happen to friends and family and neighborhoods and small communities. You know, politics is all local. The closer the politics to the people, the better, right? All right, slide 5. And we're going to talk about the Liberty Roundtable mission statement because it kind of typifies what we've learned over the years and where we think things should be. Hard-hitting talk radio, constitutional talk radio, truth-based talk radio has never been and will never be backed or supported by the mainstream in America. Liberty Roundtable has taken on the mainstream press like never before. News the networks refuse to use, one of our slogans, is the best way to educate our fellow Americans. They've destroyed this country through education, right? It's called the godless government. 10th of the Plank Communist Manifesto education system, right? They've destroyed America that way. That's really the way we're going to restore America too, isn't it? It isn't going to happen overnight. You're not going to fix America tomorrow with a new rock star. You're going to fix America one heart and one mind and one family at a time. Because the family is the fundamental unit of society, and I submit to you, that's the only way we're going to take America back. You can have $1 gazillion, helpful to get our word out, sure. I can go on and on. But you know what? You're not going to do anything until you make families strong in America, until you make husband and wives strong in America, until you stand for the proper role of marriage, and until you stand for children being taught by their parents, okay, about God, family, and country, and why it matters. So we invite all men everywhere to join us and help us restore God, family, and country in the media and our lives. Slide 6. Okay, talk radio is, believe it or not, getting cheaper and better. It's expensive, but there's so many more ways to listen than there's ever been. Ford, Chevy, all these different car manufacturers are just absolutely tripping over themselves to find out how they can put content in their vehicles. Now, it's not really good when you're driving unless it's radio. Don't you like that? So talk radio is very important. There's a device called a Livio. Costs about $119. It's a Bluetooth device. You can put that in your car and you can listen. A lot of people are taking their cell phones now that have these smartphones and this incredible content with iPhone applications and Android apps, and they can plug their phones into their cars with Bluetooth and listen over their speakers. They can either do it with a data plan, or like I told you before, we have an unlimited dial-in listen line. And people are listening all over the country. They're downloading podcasts and listening. Ways that we never thought was possible before. The internet's created the new frontier. That's why the bureaucrats want to shut it down, right? There's also a device called a Roku player. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but the Roku player, it's Roku, R-O-K-U, and it means 6 in Japanese. And a Roku player is a little device that you plug into the internet. It's a wireless device, about as big as your fist. And this device plugs into the internet and plugs into your TV. And you can do cool things with it. You can watch Netflix. If you have a Netflix account, you can watch Hulu, which is a video service on the internet that allows you to watch all kinds of archived, almost TiVoed, if you will, TV shows. And there's Amazon On Demand Video, a lot of things you can watch with it. You can play Angry Birds. There's all kinds of cool things you can do. And I know if you know, people don't want to spend money on things if it's like political, but if it's Angry Birds, they're on it. See what I mean? But anyway, so you've got this Roku player, and the Roku has a couple of hundred Roku channels. Some of them are paid, like Glenn Beck TV's on there. It's a paid service. It's very good, by the way. But there's also a couple of hundred free channels, and we have our own channel called Liberty News Radio, where you can get live and on demand and listen to our programs free. $59 one-time purchase for the player. You can use it for all kinds of things. Or you can dial the listen line that I told you about, 712-432-6623, 712-432-6623. And so you can listen on the internet, live or on demand. The ways to listen are just amazing. They're different than they've ever been before. And it's changing and getting less expensive. It's getting faster, easier, better. And you know what? Frankly, the insiders simply do not know what to do. Because you know what? The more people hear about the third largest party in America by voter registration, the more people are saying, I'm done with the Republicrats. Can't take it anymore. There's got to be a solution that's going to make a difference better than Tweedledee and Tweedledum. The Hegelian dialectic's not going to work on me anymore. And that's what education is doing for Americans all across the country. All right, slide 7, the bipartisan media. Did you know we had a bipartisan press? Okay, and the issue here is honesty. I'm going to start out with 2 quotes from Pat Buchanan. He talked about, you know what, the Republicrats, or the Republicans and Democrats, are really the left and right wings of the same bird of prey. He also talked about the 2 identical twins. That's what we've got here. They have kind of different viewpoints of how they go about it. You know, they take different sides of the issue. As long as you vote A or B, they're really happy, though. Vote C, and, well, you're not important. You used to have credibility, right? All right, and so they use this principle in the media on both sides of the aisle. And it's called the velvet hammer. And I learned about this velvet hammer principle, probably 17, 18 years ago from Chuck Harder, believe it or not. He used to do a radio program called For the People. And he was a big talk show host, and they wanted him to be on TalkNet and everything else. And he eventually left them, and he explained why he left. And it was because of the velvet hammer. And here's how the velvet hammer works. They want to control what you say. And they don't outright come to you and say, listen, you know, I just got done with the backroom smoke-filled folks conspiracy here, and here's the word. They don't do that. What they do is they come out very nice and gentle. And they praise you, and they tell you how awesome of a talk show host you are, how talented you are, how much money you can make, how many things you can do for the world that are just, you know what, you can bring us to a new frontier kind of an idea. But in their words, they say this kind of stuff. You know, when you talk about Halliburton, it's not very helpful to our advertisers. And you know your raise is coming up, don't you? We appreciate you. We love you. Keep up the great work. What have they really said to you? They've said, you know what? Don't talk about certain things. You get it, right? And it's the velvet hammer. And they couch it in telling you how awesome you are, telling you how important you are. And they do it in a multitude of ways, which I will articulate as we continue. But I just want you to understand the velvet hammer. And Chuck Harder wasn't willing to deal with the velvet hammer. They told him things like that, and he said, yeah, but you know what? There's a scandal about this company. Or there's a scandal about that. And they're like, I know, but we don't talk about it. He says, I do. And they said, great, then you don't. And that was the end of that. So the velvet hammer is not very velvety after a while. Just ask Judge Napolitano. Right? You don't even hear about what happened with the velvet hammer with him. You just hear that one day Judge Napolitano has no show, right? Because he did this incredible monologue about what would it be like if, and he went on, right? And it was incredible. And he told the tale. Well, he wasn't willing to play their velvet hammer and shut up either. So let's talk about some top-tier talk show hosts that, again, my goal is not to trash individuals. You know, I'm sure if you were with Rush, you'd love to have a cigar. Smoking's good for you. Or if you were with Sean Hannity, you'd love to, right? They're nice people. The problem is, are they willing to be a Judge Napolitano and stand up and say, Are they willing to be a Judge Roy Moore and say, hey, man, the Ten Commandments are more important than I ever was? Or are they willing just to simply get along to go along? And that's kind of what we see as these hosts capitulate. So we're going to talk about Rush Limbaugh. We're going to talk about Sean Hannity. We're going to talk about Glenn Beck. And we're going to talk about Michael Savage. Okay? And I want to talk about them in relation to the things that I've seen happen. And I want you to keep firmly in your mind the issue is honesty. Okay? So now you got a Saudi billionaire who's boasting that he can manipulate Fox News coverage. Mainstream press stuff. Are you comfortable with Saudi billionaires controlling our media? I'm not. I'm not comfortable with that at all. Slide 8. Rush Limbaugh, you know, he's the biggest talker in the nation, right? But he admits blatantly that he's a Republican water boy. Look at the slides. You can see the source on each slide. If you want to go look them up on the internet and verify them yourselves, be my guest. I'm telling you right now, though, that he was talking about how the Republicans lost, and they lost big. And he basically says, you know what, I just can't carry the water for these people that don't deserve it anymore. Newsmax. Okay? Interesting stuff when they start saying that, right? Right now, Rush Limbaugh loves to do this, and this is a lot of what the inside guys will do. Rush wants you to believe that he's not like part of the mainstream media. He wants to act like they're the drive-by media and he's like this outsider, keeping an eye on everything for you, right? But he betrays himself, and he does so in a very interesting way. And you can say, Sam, you're pulling straws on this one, but my response is you listen to the rest of the sound bites we have and the videos we have, and you decide if I'm leading the witness or not, okay? Let's see how this goes. So Rush Limbaugh makes fun of the mainstream press. He says they're all insiders. They all have this buzzword. And they use this term gracious. George Bush is so gracious. Gracious George. And, you know, I feel like it's Curious George kind of thing. But gracious George. And then here's what's funny. He makes fun of them for doing it. But at the end, remember, they got these key words, the Velvet Hammer. You must say gracious George too, Rush, to tell us that you're really in and willing to do what we say. Listen to this soundbite. Kurt's got the sound bites going on here. Here's Rush. All right, let's see. I guess we got computers going to sleep. All right, we'll see if we can get this happening here.
Incredibly gracious.
Okay, so start that over.
President and Mrs. Bush were extremely gracious.
George.
Montage yesterday and last. By the way, listen to this montage yesterday and last night from the drive-by media.
What really struck the Obama camp was how gracious President Bush was.
It was one gracious couple welcoming another.
The senator remarked how gracious President Bush was.
They were incredibly gracious.
President and Mrs. Bush were extremely gracious.
George W. Bush has been incredibly gracious.
President Bush has made this pretty easy by being so gracious.
It's very gracious of President Bush.
Everything we hear is that he was very, very gracious.
This is President Bush at his best, being very gracious.
A visit that aides described as gracious.
The Bushes are very gracious and decent people.
The Bushes, who are very gracious people.
They're being gracious about it.
President Bush has been totally gracious.
President Bush has been extremely gracious.
Laura and George Bush could not have been more gracious.
The grace, the class that the Bushes showed.
I keep hearing reports that the president has been very gracious about all this.
The last two voices you heard were the forehead, Paul Begala and Charlie Rose. Now, this is beyond absurd, and it is infuriating, because whatever you think on policy, all of these people have known for 8 years what a decent and gracious man George W. Bush is. They sought to destroy him. He didn't fight back. Now, all of a sudden, that he's being nice to Obama. He's being nice to the Messiah. Well, look at what a gracious and decent guy George W. Bush is. It's another indictment of the unprofessionalism of journalists today.
And this is the EIB network. See how it is? He had to say that George was gracious too. I'm telling you, you can call it a conspiracy, you can call it what you want. I don't know, I'm just telling you. Why did he say, I'm not going to tell you that they're gracious at all. I'm going to tell you that, you know what, he wants to spy on you. And then he wants to lie and say, oh, it's just overseas terrorists. And then, oh, it was really you. And then, oh, I know I was involved in criminal behavior. Please have Congress kind of give approval on the back end, right? That's the kind of guy we're dealing with in George Bush, the guy that doesn't care about the supreme law of the land and your Fourth and Fifth Amendments at all. We're also talking about the guy who, we're going to say it was Hillary care, but then what about the George Bush prescription drug care? And then it's Romney, Bush, Hillary, Obama, what do they call that, Republican care? See what I mean? They're both left, right wing of the same bird of prey, right? Slide 9. Drive-by media, okay? Now, here's what happens. What Rush likes to do is he likes to talk about the drive-by media. Whenever they attack him, he calls it a drive-by, like a drive-by shooting, right? And so it's not fair because he can't defend himself to the mainstream press. He doesn't have the coverage they have. Or anything. He's on like 600 radio stations. Doesn't really have the coverage they have, and so it's the drive-by media. But then he does a drive-by on Ron Paul. Listen to this.
I'm sorry, but this Ron Paul is going to destroy this party if they keep, if this is nuts on parade. The media loves this guy as nuts on parade. They want the whole Republican Party to be identified with the kookiness of Ron Paul. Hey, let Iran get nukes. It's our fault anyway. 1979 happened because they weren't minding their own business. That audience goes nuts. Oh my gosh, what am I watching here? Oh, look who's on Fox. Oh, there he is outside the ice cream stand. Good old Ron Paul. Yeah, that's what we need.
Think about that for a minute. He just did a drive-by on Ron. Ron's not there to defend himself. We all know Ron simply says, you know what, my goal is to obey the supreme law of the land. And now you're over by the ice cream stand as a kook. Now you want everybody in the world to get nukes. Okay, Ron never said he wanted everybody to get nukes. What he said was, you know what, is it really our business to be in the affairs of these other nations? Why don't we obey the founding fathers and avoid these foreign entanglements? Why don't we obey the supreme law of the land? And you know what, if we're going to go to war, let's declare it properly, get in and get the job done and get out. Otherwise, let's defend America. There's a big difference between defense and nation building, defense and, quote, foreign aid. That's all he said. Because you got the Republican water boy doing a drive-by on Ron Paul, right? Very interesting how that attack works. And haven't you noticed the ones that attack Ron the most are the supposed conservative hosts, the Glenn Becks, the Sean Hannitys? Well, here's what's interesting. They supposedly have all these wonderful phone callers. When you call them, you can't even get in. It's so busy. You with me? I mean, because everybody listens to them, right? But here's what's funny. Did you guys know that they fake their calls? Did you know that they have paid actors for their calls? It's true. And the actors are promised a very lucrative wage. Look at the source there. The actors basically have a kind of a special deal. If I'm a talk show host and I want to get paid actors to call in on my show and take a given side of the issue, like talk about Ron Paul by the ice cream stand or something, I can get a paid guy, give him a script, he'll call in and he'll be very dynamic and and I'll be sure that when I call for an actor, they won't give me the same person too often. Okay, this is mainstream press. They got caught. Sean Hannity. Okay, these guys got caught doing this. Isn't that interesting? And then what happens is they say, don't really have time for your call, you know what I mean? And if you bring anything up, you're a kook on the radio. You're like nuts on parade. You're like a Ron Paul operative or something. Very interesting. But they got their own paid actors. Are those operatives? Or just paid actors? Just wondering, I kind of find it interesting. Slide 10. So we're talking about Sean Hannity now. Sean Hannity got popped. It was horrible. Okay, the Daily Show caught him. Sean Hannity flat out deceived. He lied and he was forced to apologize. This is for reals. So what happened was, Sean had this event that he was covering. And the problem is the crowd size just wasn't big enough, you know what I mean? And Michelle Bachmann was there. It was all about health care and all this stuff. And, well, somehow they made a mistake. Here, watch this. See what you think.
Time for the sideshow. Re-rack the tape. Last night, Jon Stewart did an expose of Fox News' coverage of that anti-health care reform rally last week here in Washington. Let's watch it.
Change was in the air, and Fox News was there to cover it.
People didn't just come to hear speakers. They then pivoted, fanned out, went into the Capitol, went into the office buildings, were very polite, went from door to door to door, knocked on the doors. We handed out actual pages from the bill.
I'm sorry, can we get back? I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt. That was weird. Because when that clip started, it was a clear fall day in Washington, D.C. Not a cloud in the sky, the leaves have changed. It's well attended but sparse. All of a sudden, the trees turn green again, and it's cloudy, And it looks like thousands and thousands of more people arrived. If I didn't know any better, I would think they just put 2 different days together and acted like they didn't. Where have I seen that last footage before?
This is just a fraction. There are people meeting all across the country. This is just in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that was actually from Glenn Beck's 9/12 rally 2 months ago, his much bigger 9/12 rally. It seems Sean Hannity used footage of a bigger crowd from a totally different event to make last week's GOP healthcare rally appear more heavily attended.
It was a beautiful sight to see.
Notice, and by the way, in the middle of the day on Thursday.
Yeah, or Saturday. 2 months ago at a completely different rally.
Jon Stewart, I salute you. So who decided to use 2-month-old file tape to bolster, even balloon, the size of that Maryland Michelle Bachmann rally? Anyway, stay tuned.
And finally tonight, although it pains me to say this, Jon Stewart, Comedy Central, he was right. Now, on his program last night, he mentioned that we had played some incorrect video on this program last week while talking about the Republican health care rally on Capitol Hill. He was correct. We screwed up. We aired some video of a rally in September, along with the video from the actual event. It was an inadvertent mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. So, Mr. Stewart, you were right. We apologize. But by the way, I want to thank you and all your writers for watching. And that is all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us.
Now, I find that interesting. You might mix up Sean Hannity's videos. Okay, I kind of go there, but how do you mix up Glenn Beck's videos in there? Okay, does that really happen? I mean, is content like copyrighted, or do you think there's like, hey, we got this big old folder of files, it's like, oh, there's the Glenn Beck videos, and there's last year's videos, and this year's videos, and it's all mixed together, and hey, Larry clicked on the wrong one, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't think so, folks. These are different producers, different staffs, right? Totally different people doing this stuff. Okay? And so he apologized. My question is Glenn Beck going to sue him for copyright, or what do you think? Probably not, you know. All right, next slide, number 11. We're talking about now Glenn Beck, because, you know, he's innocent. I mean, somebody else used his video, right? But Glenn Beck makes some interesting statements. He's right on, and this, I know a lot of people are going to be, Sam, leave Glenn Beck alone. He's a nice guy. Just come on, he's coming around, you know. He wasn't what he used to be. You know, he used to be a drunk, then he quit that, and now he's all good, and now he's really getting political, Sam. He's been talking about the Constitution lately, Sam. He talks about the 5,000-year leap. He's going, Sam, come on, give him a chance. Okay, I'm willing to give him a chance. If you went to church with him, I'm sure he's a nice guy. Bet you if you went out to dinner with Glenn and Tanya, it'd be nice, right? I don't have a problem with that. But here's my problem with Glenn. When he starts to point the turret at us, you know what? Now it's time to take the gloves off, okay? Because you've got, let's see, the Southern Poverty Law Center saying guys like you and I are, well, we're a domestic threat, right? Okay, that's serious business because the Homeland Security is teamed up with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I wonder if they're teamed up with Glenn Beck. Because do you guys believe in 9/11 truth? Do you want to know the truth on 9/11? Some will say yes, some will say no. I'm fine with that. Here's the point, though. Do you believe that people ought to have their own opinions on it? And if somebody has their opinion on it, I call myself a truther, okay? If somebody has their own opinion on that, are they really a terrorist? I would say no. Glenn would say yes. Listen up.
Al-Qaeda, they'd like to destroy us, and they will work with anyone. There are also people like white supremacists or 9/11 truthers that would also like to destroy the country. They'll work with anybody they can.
Now, just because I want the truth on everything, so I'm a truther, I guess. Now remember, that's just a word created by the conservative talk show host to say, you're not one of those guys, are you? Remember Glenn Beck took out, what, Medina? Is that her name, from Texas? A very constitutional candidate doing a great job. That wasn't even her issue. Glenn trapped her and barbecued, torpedoed her campaign, right? Okay, now if Deborah Medina feels a certain way about 9/11 truth, that's her own gig, and she can have her own opinions. But there's no need for us to point the turret and team up with Homeland Security and the Southern Poverty Law Center and attack people and suggest they're a domestic threat. So my problem with Glenn Beck is when you go over the top like that, now it's not just I disagree with you, Glenn. You can have your opinion, I'll have mine, thank you. Glad it's America, we can express them. You're taking off the gloves and doing things that might end up putting someone like me or Deborah Medina or you in jail, right? It's a big difference, Glenn. So, you know what, when Glenn starts doing that, the question is the velvet hammer there? Now, this is the guy that came on the radio and said, hey, man, there's something to these FEMA camps going on. Then he got on TV and he said, ha, nothing to it, just kidding. You think that velvet hammer was there, or am I just confused? Just wondering. Well, Glenn Beck, the other problem with Glenn Beck, remember the issue is honesty I talked to you about, right? Well, Glenn Beck has got caught stealing content. Yeah, he pretended it was his, it wasn't. You got Accuracy in Media, Cliff Kincaid, a personal friend, right? Beck took Cliff Kincaid's information, presented it as if it was his own. Okay, mainstream press source there, all documented. You can ask Cliff about it. I've talked to him about it. Okay, the issue is honesty. Do we have the right to steal other content and pretend it's not ours? Or pretend that it's ours? I don't think so. Okay? Now, Sean can do that to Glenn. But can Glenn do that to Cliff without his permission? I don't think so. So you got the mainstream press faking callers, faking video, pointing the turret at us as a domestic threat. I'm getting concerned fast, and it gets worse. Slide 12. We're going to talk about Michael Savage, because you know what? A lot of people tell me, hey, Michael, he takes off the gloves. He's serious. He's different. In fact, he even talked about starting a third party. Did you know that? A couple years ago. The problem is he's not part of the third largest party in America, is he? I was thinking somebody ought to let him know about the Constitution Party with, more voter registration than any party in America, not counting the left, right wing of the same bird of prey, right? Anyway, it seems like he doesn't really understand that because he hasn't done anything about his third-party rhetoric. And that's kind of the interesting thing. Does he just talk or does he walk? But Michael Savage does not like Ron Paul. Can't stand him, okay? And it's evident in all these talk show hosts' rhetoric and the things that they do. There's two sound bites that I want to play you from Michael Savage. Michael Savage says that Ron Paul can't win. Now, I got a question. If a single guy like that is going to say that somebody can't win, where would he get such knowledge? We haven't had the vote yet, have we? In fact, the delegates haven't even voted yet, have they? But he's just so sure. Does he have some inside knowledge? Or is it kind of like we can, for sure, with the mainstream press, create a self-fulfilling prophecy? All right, here it goes.
If I brought up the questions about, but you see, I know, Beowulf, you know what's going to happen the minute I do this, right? Shall I even tell them what I'm not going to do? Because then they'll do it? Okay, we get flooded every day with Ron Paul fanatics. That's number one. Every day we get flooded with Bertha calls. We don't take them. Boring, bad radio. Okay, that's number one. So if you're a Ron Paul fanatic or a Bertha caller, please, can you do us a favor and leave the lines open for a legitimate caller? It doesn't mean that you don't have a valid point, but I'm not going to cover it. That would be like me covering abortion or reloading ammunition. If I wanted to load the lines up, all I got to do is start talking about reloading 30-06 rounds in my basement, which I don't do, right? The minute I get into that, that's the end of the show. Or abortion, various techniques used around the world. We don't do that. There go the lines. I knew it. The minute I said what I wouldn't do.
We don't do that. It'll be the end of my radio show. Do you see what he's telling you? We're not going to talk about like the Second Amendment. Doesn't matter that the first, if it doesn't work, the second one will. We're not going to talk about that, right? It's just kind of crazy stuff. Bad radio, boring radio. Is he here to tell you what bad or boring radio is? And by the way, don't call in. God bless you. Don't call in. He needs to have room for the actors to call in. See what I'm saying? It's kind of busy up here, Okay, isn't that interesting? We're not going to talk about abortion. We're not going to talk about anything like that. Has he lost his mind? I would submit to you the pro-life issue is one of the most important issues in America. If we don't respect life, what will we respect? That's slide 13. Okay, no, let's go back to 12. We got the second soundbite, and he trashes Ron Paul again. This is pervasive. Even National Public Radio and Combs, of Hannity and Combs, they're more friendly to Ron than the conservative talk show hosts, supposedly, right? All right, so listen to Savage again.
It is the Savage Nation. Of course, we got a TSA perv. That's not being talked about.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
We got pornography in the public libraries where people are just so offended they're running out in horror. And the ACLU says that's perfectly legal for your child to be subjected to child pornography in a museum, in a library. That's America today. Now I'm supposed to where Ron Paul is in. Okay, big deal. He has about as less of a chance than I do to be president. Not that his ideas are wrong, but I'm a pragmatist. Why throw the election to Obama with running a guy who can't win? Why? Why would you do that? All right, now I'm going to get the Ron Paul fanatics. God bless you. Don't call me.
Now, Ron Paul fanatics. So you know what? If you even like Ron Paul, if you even think there's a legitimate point that Ron might make from time to time, you're just an absolute fanatic, ready for your calls. You're a whack. You're nuts. We don't care about anything you say. We don't believe in you. You're important, America. It's bad radio. That's what these talk show hosts think of us. Okay, now it's also interesting to me, he talks about all these different things that he's going to talk about. He's cool to talk about, like pervs in the libraries and everything. That's all cool topics, but man, don't talk about that pro-life issue. That's whacked out. These are the people that are the gatekeepers in the media, folks. Slide 13. All right, so Fox News seems to be this, I don't know, pervasive, they report, you decide. The question is what they report, in my mind. The issue, remember, ladies and gentlemen, is honesty. It's not just the trash Fox News. But you know what? Most Americans, I mean, if you're a conservative, you check out Fox News, right? Oh, good. I knew you were one of us. It's all good. You pat each other on the back, right? But Fox News was in that Sean Hannity fiasco with the wrong video. They do it again to Ron Paul this time. Okay? Ron Paul won CPAC twice in a row, okay? I know the mainstream press didn't know what to do with themselves over that, but he did. And strangely enough, we didn't even have vote fraud, I guess, because he won. But what was interesting about this whole thing is this. The first time Ron won, there was a bunch of Romney folks there, and they all booed Ron intentionally to make it look like it was just, there was no support. And what's interesting to me is, how do you get no support with all the boos, but yet he won the vote? What counts more, the boos or the vote? But the mainstream press focused on the boos that year. Well, the next year, Ron won again. And he won with an increasing margin, and the boo-sayers, if you will, weren't really there. It was all claps. Now, here's what happened. Fox got the wrong video again. They're sorry about that. This time they weren't mixing up Glenn Beck stuff. They're just mixing up different years. Now, I don't know about you guys, but usually when people organize things like on computers and archives, they like separate things by year and stuff. You guys ever do that? Well, anyway, these guys didn't do that. They had it all mixed together, and Larry clicked on the wrong video again. You know, sorry about that. Didn't mean to. But what I find fascinating about this is that this Ron Paul issue haunts us again. And they tried to claim it was a mistake, but I'm going to prove they're lying. So not only do they show you the wrong video, but then they lie about it. Here's the vid here.
During a live introduction to Congressman Ron Paul on Tuesday, America's Newsroom incorrectly aired a clip from the 2010 CPAC event in Washington rather than this year's event. It was clearly a mistake. We used the wrong videotape. There are similarities in the shot between last year's event and this year. 2011, screen left, 2010, screen right. Ron Paul won both years. However, there were audible boos in 2010, while you heard a lot more cheering this year. It's an honest mistake. We apologize for the error, and we look forward to having Representative Paul back on our program very soon.
And when he gets back on, the first thing we're going to say is, hi, Ron, you can't win. What do you have to say for yourself? Right? Ron, we know you don't have any delegates. They haven't voted for you. And they'll go on and on. But what I find fascinating is if you go back on YouTube, and in the interest of time, I couldn't drag that out and play it also. But what's interesting is you watch the thing, and the host starts out the commentary for the second year Ron won. Hi, Ron. What'd you think about that crowd booing you there, buddy? Kind of a sad state of affairs. Ron's like, I don't know about that. I wasn't there at the boo part. You know, I won and I moved on. I have places to go, people to see, things to do, delegates to get, kind of thing. But if it was really just Larry pressed the wrong button and played the wrong video, how did the host start out talking about the booing when it wasn't in the event he was supposed to be covering? He lied, folks. He flat out lied to you. Right? We report, you decide, huh? I'm deciding that they're lying. That's what I'm saying. Their reporting doesn't hold up for me. All right, slide 14. Fox News does it again. Good old Fox over there by the ice cream stand. Wow. Well, this one, we're going to have the communist press set us straight on this one. You ready? This is an international story. You got Russia, and there's supposed to be riots going on there. It's just a crazy, everybody's just, burning the barns down. It's just nuts. Wrong problem. Or the problem is they got the wrong country. Good old Fox. And Russia today caught them at it. Okay? And so now we're having to go to the communist press to hold the American press accountable. Check this out.
Now, news bulletins around the world have been following Russia's election rallies, but one channel stands out. America's Fox News has been showing streets ablaze, violent clashes and firebombs thrown at security officers, but with one major problem. The images are not from Russia, they're from Greece. Marina Portnaya has been watching.
Whoops.
America has its fair share of protests and political dissent to be dealing with. Instead of keeping an eye on the ball, the country's mass media machine has turned to protests in Russia and dropped the ball on reporting the facts.
Thousands of protesters have gathered in Moscow, lashing out against Prime Minister Vladimir Putin and his ruling United Russia Party.
The only problem is that this video is not from Russia. Fox News Channel aired video of fires and chaos in Athens, convincing viewers that this mayhem is playing out in Moscow. The Fair and Balanced network paid no mind to the Greek lettering in the background. In case you're wondering, it says Greek National Bank. What matters is that this is what Moscow protests have looked like.
It's not surprising whatsoever that at the moment that there would be any kind of protest, no matter how small it be in Russia, against the Russian government, that it would be greatly exaggerated in media and used by the U.S. government as well as a way to try to somehow push for a change in Russia that would be more favorable to U.S. interests.
Journalist and author Eva Golinger believes mass media is Washington's most valuable weapon in encouraging revolt elsewhere, under the mantle of spreading democracy, such as the so-called Orange Revolution in Ukraine or Rose Revolution in Georgia.
Perception is created that something is happening in that country that's not right, and that the government is somehow responsible, and so therefore if that government ends up being removed, it somehow is justified. That you know, the media has played a key role in creating a justification for regime change.
Similar anti-government demonstrators have been reported in at least 50 other cities in Russia.
U.S. leaders have leveled harsh criticism against Russia in the aftermath of Sunday's parliamentary election. And critics say its free press has worked to reinforce the narrative.
The media tends to march in lockstep with the government. It tends to take its cues from the government. It tends to, mobilize its resources to showcase what the government says is true, even when later it turns out not to be true.
As was the case in this erroneous CNN report.
Well, in eastern Russia, more than 3,000 people protested against proposed changes to the country's time zones.
The video shown by CNN is not of protesters, but rather of soccer fans rioting in Moscow over the killing of a fellow supporter.
The problem is that we showed the wrong pictures.
Only after the error was repeatedly noticed, CNN owned up to its mistake.
We do apologize for the error and are grateful to the many Russian viewers who have pointed it out to us.
The sloppiness of it all is reflecting, the lack of awareness of the journalists themselves. Many of them are completely uninformed about the world. They have opinions that have no factual basis to them, but it doesn't stop them because it's what looks good that matters more than what really is true.
The truth is that America has its own social, economic, and political challenges to be dealing with. And while Washington works on getting its own house in order, powerful mass media outlets can work on getting their facts straight. Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
There you go, the Communist Press helping us out, ladies and gentlemen. So they get the year folders mixed up. They get the host folders mixed up. They get soccer mixed up with politics. They get Greece mixed up with Russia. I mean, they're sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. They really are. Slide 15. I'm going to go through these quite quickly, but I'm going to document. One of the things they said in there is, you know what? It's all tied to the government. The mainstream press follows the government, and I'm going to prove it. Slide 15. Can you say election tampering? Okay, you got 36 talk show hosts appearing at the White House. Clinton did it. Bush did it. Both parties do it. The left, right wing of the same bird of prey, right? Okay, so they had 36 talk show hosts just hang out at the White House, man. Special deal. Slide 16. Conspiracy theory or conspiracy reality. Bush welcomes talk show hosts to the West Wing. By the way, the hosts didn't tell their listeners. But you know what? A couple of wire news services reported it after the fact, and we got it. Why are the talk show hosts hanging out at the White House? You cool with that? I'm certainly not. If they invite me, I wouldn't go. Of course, I've never been invited. So slide 17. Okay, I'm calling this a talk radio star chamber. This meeting was off the record. Talk show hosts went to the White House again. All the inside talk show hosts are there. They broadcast from the White House lawn. They go to the West Wing. They hang out with George. They had secret meetings, and they weren't allowed to talk about the meetings that they had with George. They were just to say, George is a good guy. He really understands the war, and he really understands what's happening. Thank heavens we got George up there to take care of us. They all came out of the meeting talking like that. Isn't that interesting? All right, slide 18. I want to point out that silence is golden too. A lot of times it's what they say that's a problem, but a lot of times it's what they don't say that's important. Joel Skousen talks about how the Republicans are helping out Barack Obama, and they're doing it by not talking about the issues. So let's see how this works. Barack Obama says, you know what? Mitt Romney's not being honest about his tax records and about his bank accounts. It's like this. He's not transparent here. We're going to have transparency. And then Mitt goes, I am too transparent. I've been telling you guys everything. I'll release more soon. Why doesn't he say, hey, buddy, where's your beer certificate? Where'd you go to college, my friend? Let's talk about transparency, son. None of that happens. So it's what they don't say, and the issue is honesty. Can a lie be told by not saying anything? I submit the answer is yes. Slide 19. You know what? People are putting their money where their mouth is. And believe it or not, Peter Theos, he's one of the founders of PayPal, he put his money where his mouth is. He put $1.25 million into libertarian boats that'll be like cities with no rules. Okay? He's also encouraging people to basically skip college, entrepreneurs to skip college. He put his money into that. Slide 20. The Republicans and Democrats are doing it. They're putting their money where their mouth is. You got Republican radio, all the talk show hosts I just talked about. Why do I pick on them? Because they tell you that it's like business. It's not, it's just business, right? But you got big corporations. The Democrat side, they just tell you we want government radio. And thus NPR and that kind of stuff, right? It's interesting how that works. Both of them are really backed by the government, aren't they? Neither of them will tell you the tale of liberty. But they do put their money where their mouth is. You can see it everywhere. Slide 21. The gay and lesbians are doing it even. The gays have a new ad network on the internet. They're loud and proud about it, right? Their traffic is growing. They're setting records. They've got a recession-proof support, don't they? Interesting how that is. But they got lots of money and they put their money where their mouth is. Look who their advertisers are. They got big advertisers supporting all of them. All right, slide 22. The main problem, ladies and gentlemen, for the constitutionalists and the conservatives everywhere is, you know, everybody needs a return on their money. You know, I'm a businessman. Got to have a big return. I understand people want to do well with their money, but there's a little bit more to society than the bottom line, isn't there? There's a little more to society saying, I'm going to give back. I don't know, wasn't it Ford that decided to empower his workers? Kind of interesting how that works. And what the conservatives always say is, I'm with you in spirit. Just not with my money or my effort. I'm not going to put my money where my mouth is, but I believe in what you're doing. Keep it up there, buddy. So you say, Sam, this is all neat. I appreciate your negativity, but what about the solutions? And I've got solutions. I say we put our money where our mouth is. You say, Sam, how can we do that? I simply say the power of one. I can't decide what my neighbor's going to do, but I can decide what I'm going to do. What if I got $1 a day? You know, think in terms of $1 a day in fiat money, it's like 2 cents in real money, right? What about 2 cents a day? Okay, if you had 1 million people put $1 a day in, you'd have $365 million a year. Think we could take back the media? Think we could force them to cover our issues? What if we couldn't get 1 million people? What if we could only get 100,000 people and we had 36 plus million a year? All right, what if we could only get 10,000 people to do it and we had 3.6 million a year? And what if only 1,000 people participated and we had $365,000 a year? What if we only got 100 people to do it? It's not very many. You'd still have $36,000 plus a year to do things. There's a lot we can do, ladies and gentlemen. The Founding Fathers gave their all for liberty. One story is that one of the Founding Fathers, you know, the British took his home and all the privates were there and he's like, fire. And they're like, no, sir, it's your home. And he said, I told you to fire, right? Okay, they gave it all for liberty. We're talking about $1 a day from Americans and people are going, got to have a return on my money, you know, it's important. All right, so the bottom line is I say there are solutions. The solutions are in the power of one. The solutions are in us putting our money where our mouth is. And I'm not just begging for money. We are putting together an organization called the Give Me Liberty Fund that can help take back the media, that can help educate people. We've got Chuck Baldwin and Tim Baldwin and many others involved. We want to create a constitutional lawyers organization as well. A lot of good things are happening, but what I want you to do is figure out where you believe the best causes are, and that's where I want to put you. That's where I want you to put your time and your money. We declare, we the people, along with the grace of the Almighty, we can and will restore our grand old republic. Thank you.